Greetings and welcome to this edition of
Positronic Hypersonic.
I'm Barry P. Cook, and I'm here to talk to you about the state of Star Wars: The Acolyte in relation to its reception by fans. And I use that word loosely because, there are fans who think that the true fans are people who like all of Star Wars before Disney took over, and that anyone who's a fan of anything that includes Disney Star Wars are not real fans. So, the word has different meanings depending on who you're talking to. I think that anyone who likes anything Star Wars from the beginning until now is a Star Wars fan, but that's just me. Anyway, I'm doing this video about this because this series seems to have upset a lot of people, as has a lot of Disney Star Wars, but this series really seems to be getting under people's skin, especially since the third episode aired, because things that occurred in it, according to some, changed Star Wars canon in a way that they don't like, and included other things that the people who don't like Disney Star Wars seem to think are apocryphal on their own outside of any changes to canon. And it's really bothering me because I think that a lot of these people, those in the media anyway, or Matt McGloin over at Cosmic Big News, Gary over at Nerdrotic, Dictor Doomcock, The Critical Drinker, Midnight's Edge, and other people of that ilk seem to me to be people who hate on things, partly out of genuine dislike for them, but I think also a great deal because it makes the money to hate on these things. It generates clicks for their videos. It elevates their platforms. It elevates them as media personalities and makes them money because their videos are monetized. And that just gets under my skin. Like, if you don't like something, you don't like something, but don't harp on it extra because you benefit from doing so. That just really bothers me that they do that. And, to a certain extent, I can understand it. I understand that since the sequel movies, people have been upset with Disney Star Wars because it changed Luke Skywalker in a way that wasn't great, which, I'm not a fan of myself entirely, because they think that the Daisy Ridley character, Rey, was a Mary Sue and a paper-thin character, and, all kinds of things like that from the sequel films bother them. And I get that. The sequel films were not fantastic, but ever since then, they just cannot let go of their hate of Star Wars. And some of it has to do with the fact that they just think everything under the sun is woke, which they don't like. And so, they lump Star Wars in with that, Disney Star Wars. And it just drives me crazy because, as I said, I don't think that their dislike of Star Wars since Disney took over, the dislike that they voice constantly on their websites or blogs and on YouTube, etc., is entirely because of the content. I think the hate that they express via these platforms is partly because they want to generate outrage for Star Wars, just like they do for other things, because it makes them money. So I think they exaggerate the extent to which they hate these things and to which they think these things are not good. And I've talked about this before. They use words like garbage, woke garbage, utter trash, utter shit. And I think that that is hyperbolic and sensationalized. And I think it poisons the discourse. I think when you present an opinion that's that drastic, there's no room for really discussing things because you're at such an extreme that you then can't walk that back at all to have a realistic discussion about things that maybe need to be tweaked to make Star Wars better than it is under Disney. That is to say, when you throw out words like that and throw it so far under the bus that it's, under the crust of the mantle of the earth, you give the impression that you don't think there's any redeeming it. And when that's your position, you can't be part of the discussion. And when that kind of rhetoric permeates the discourse, I don't think a discussion can really be had because it's going to get drowned out by the people who are engaging in this hyperbolic, sensationalized, quote unquote, discourse. So it really drives me up a wall. But I want to get into some specifics. I want to get into what they've been saying about the Acolyte, specifically since episode 3 aired, but of course, since before the thing ever came out, because that's what they do. They trash shit before it even comes out, which is another thing that drives me insane. Anyway, since episode 3 has come out, these people that I mentioned, and other people, I forgot to mention he's been doing it, over at Heel versus Babyface. Since episode 3's come out, they've been talking about specific things that they didn't like, which is good actually, because it's better than them just generically saying, oh, it's woke garbage, etc. So let's talk about the specific things they've been saying. The first thing they've been saying that drives me absolutely insane is that the episode was about lesbians in space, lesbian witches in space, and that now Star Wars has introduced lesbian witches, which of course isn't true, at least insofar as what's been seen on screen. Yes, it's a coven of witches. Yes, they're all female, but we've seen that before in Star Wars. At least as far as I know, it goes back to the Clone Wars. It might go back before that. I am not the biggest Star Wars expert in the world. I've not read the comic books that were part of canon. I've not read the novels that were part of canon until Disney took over. I've not played the games that were part of canon before Disney took over. So I don't know if they go back before that, but they go back at least as far as the Clone Wars. This isn't new. It isn't exclusive to Disney. And there may have been in the history of witches in Star Wars some witches who were male, especially if you consider the witches of Dathomir. Some of them might have been guys. I don't remember what was in the Clone Wars, but I think there were 1 or 2 who were male. But at any rate, predominantly what they've shown, as far as witches in Star Wars is concerned, has been women. And nobody ever said the L word, okay? Nobody ever said they're lesbian witches. Now, all of a sudden, they're lesbian witches because people don't like Disney Star Wars and they have to hate on it. But what was shown on screen in The Acolyte does not make it absolutely clear that they're lesbians. They're just a bunch of women. Yes, the 2 women who created Osha and May are women. And yes, the creation of children is something that we normally attribute to people who are in romantic relationships. But that's not always the case, right? Sometimes in real life, surrogates give birth to children in place of a mother who couldn't have a child herself or who didn't want to have a child herself because of risks to her health, meaning that even though physically she wasn't incapable of having children like some women are, she would have had to risk her health to do it, or because some women just don't want to deal with the changes to their body that would happen, so they hire surrogates. Some of those women are in relationships with other people, possibly women, a lot of the time men, and some of them are single. And nobody accuses these people of being lesbians. They don't go around saying, well, that woman and her surrogate who birthed this child together are lesbians. And I imagine what they might say about that is that they don't because, well, somewhere along the line, there was a sperm involved, either because it was the sperm of the partner of the woman who hired the surrogate or a donor, etc. But that doesn't make any sense because the scenarios where there was a male partner involved with the woman who hired the surrogate and whose sperm it might be in a relationship, which makes the woman who hired the surrogate not a lesbian, those are only a portion of those scenarios. And as I said, no one goes around saying that other women involved in these scenarios that don't involve someone involved with the woman who hires the surrogate, a man, lesbians. Sometimes they might be, but no one just assumes generally that these people are lesbians if there isn't a man involved with the woman who hired the surrogate in the role of their partner. They just don't say that. Why? Because it's not true as a general rule. So why they would suddenly say that these 2 women who created these twins in The Acolyte are automatically lesbians because they conceived a child together without the involvement of a male partner of either of them just makes 0 sense, because that happens in real life and no one says that those people are lesbians in those cases. So it's just absurd. Now, if they had kissed each other in a romantic way, or stated that they were in a romantic relationship, then you could say, yeah, they're lesbians, at least those two. But that didn't happen. And even if it had, and even if they were lesbians, why is this a problem? Why is it something to call out? Why is it something to complain about? If Star Wars has now introduced lesbians, so what? Why does that make the episode bad? Why does it make the series bad? Well, of course it doesn't. But these people are generally right-wing that complain about it, and they don't like gay people. And it's just absurd. And I think they just need to shut the hell up. There's no confirmation within the episode that these people are lesbians. Now, did Kathleen Kennedy or the Acolyte showrunner or some of the actresses say that the characters are lesbians or might be lesbians? I don't know. Maybe they did. Cool. It doesn't mean they are lesbians because that's not what's depicted on screen specifically. So they need to stop saying it. And they need to stop saying it because, again, whether it's true or not is irrelevant because there's nothing wrong with lesbians being in Star Wars. There's all kinds of creatures all across the galaxy in Star Wars. And if some of them are homosexual or asexual or non-sexual, whatever term you want to use, or intersexed or whatever, who cares? It isn't something to criticize. There were never gay people in Star Wars before. Okay, now there are. And like, what's the problem? Either way, you need to shut the hell up. That's all there is to it. Now let's talk about the other thing that they've picked on, which I give them a little bit more leeway on because it involves changes to canon, which is something that in other media I don't like myself very much. They claim that the creation of the twins in the way that it was described in the show, which is kind of vague, but apparently has to do with the one witch's use of the Force, Anastasia, I think is her name, the more human-looking mother of the twins, as opposed to the one that looks like a Dathomite. To hear her tell it, she used the Force, which she and her people call the thread, to create the twins, which the other mother then carried to term. And this rubs people the wrong way because of the lore surrounding how Anakin Skywalker came to be. And they're saying that having it be the case that created by the Force contradicts canon because that's how Anakin was created. And up until the point that Anakin was created, it hadn't been done before in the history of Star Wars before this series was made. And so I went and looked first to see how true that is. Because, you know, again, not a Star Wars expert, don't remember every single detail from the prequel film. So I went back and looked. And apparently there are three main theories as to how Anakin was created. Qui-Gon Jinn theorized that midichlorians conceived Anakin. And in the Darth Vader comic, it's suggested that Palpatine influenced the midichlorians while they were inside his mother's womb. This could mean that Anakin was created by the dark side of the Force to restore balance. Another theory is that the Force itself created Anakin to fulfill the prophecy of the Chosen One. Now, what the difference is between those two theories, I'm not sure, but those are listed as two separate theories online. So there you go. There's a third theory, and it's called the Grand Experiment theory, which, according to Wikipedia, says that the Sith Lord Darth Plagueis tried to create life by controlling the midichlorians, I guess inside Shmi, but the experiment backfired and created Anakin instead. Now, what the difference is between creating life and creating Anakin instead, I don't know, but those are the three theories. And I guess if it was said in the prequels or media connected to the prequels that was canon before Disney, that was the only time that it ever happened, or that it was unheard of before, then it would seem to be a contradiction with the canon, except that, you know, the Acolyte takes place 100 years or so before the events of the prequel series, the prequel films. And, you know, the whole plot of the Acolyte is the Jedi covered up a lot of what happened on May and Osha's home planet. So it seems to me that it's possible that it did in fact happen before Anakin once, and that the people alive at the time of the prequel films just didn't know about it. And, you know, it isn't that insane that something very, very difficult to do would happen twice in 100 years. as opposed to once. That's not completely insane. So I don't think it is a contradiction of canon. It is additional information that supplements the canon, which, makes the fabric of Star Wars and the fabric of the canon richer. And when they did stuff like this on Star Trek Discovery that changed canon, I would get upset every single time because they never explained it as they were going. They then would create, these dialogue bursts retroactively that tried to explain the changes they made previously, but which never really made complete sense. Whereas here, it's built into the story, right? Because we know already there's a cover up. That's the whole premise of the show. That May is out there killing these Jedi because of what happened on her homeworld around the time of the fire that killed her family, and the cover up surrounding it, or the seeming cover up that surrounded it. So the idea that this happened, this creation of life, and then later wasn't known about by Jedi in the future at the time of the prequel series, makes complete sense. So it's not like when they've retconned things on Star Trek Discovery or when they retcon things in other media, because the explanation is built in such that if you were to watch things in chronological order of their timeline in Star Wars, it would all make sense. And you would just have to see the Jedi of the prequel series who didn't know about what happened as people who just didn't know about what happened before. And there's nothing wrong with that. So again, I don't think they have a reason to be outraged. I think the extent to which they're outraged is being exaggerated because it gives them clicks, either on their videos or their articles or their memes or whatever, which in turn, in a lot of cases, makes people money, elevates them as media personality, elevates their platforms. And it's just wrong and it needs to stop. And there are only a few episodes of this season of this show left. Let's wait until the end. Let's wait and see what else they say before we start saying that, yup, it definitely changed canon. Yup, they're lesbians. Not that anything should be said about that anyway, if they are. But nope, they had to trash the show long before it even came out because of rumors. They have to trash the show as it's airing because of things that they think it's saying and they think it's depicting, because it gets them rewards in the form of money, in the form of popularity, etc. But I've urged these people to do this before, to wait until something comes out, to wait until the season ends. And it's funny because people used to say that to me about Discovery, wait until it ends. And I guess it was fair of them to say that, though at the time I didn't think it was, because they did eventually retroactively try to explain stuff, but those explanations sucked and were just ridiculous. But I didn't know that at the time, so maybe I should have waited. In any case, that's what I'm saying people should do now. Just wait until the stupid thing ends, and then we'll have more information. Now, might they not address these by the end of the season and then they'll leave them hanging for season 2? Sure. But let's wait and see. And then at the end of season 1, let's critique the level to which they didn't explain things, how they fit. Because at least at that point, it's a reasonable point at which to say, okay, come on now, what's with the changes to canon? Because you've said your bit up to this point and you haven't explained it. And it's legitimate to critique now. That's what I think we need to do. As for me, I'm going to keep watching. I'm going to keep doing breakdown and review videos for the episodes. And, so far in the ones I've done, I've been critical of the show for other reasons. I've said the acting is not great on behalf of the folks playing the Jedi. They don't come off to me as Jedi. They don't have any gravitas. And, people have criticized the writing itself, and I can't say that I disagree with those criticisms. But I do not think the show is dog shit, garbage, woke garbage. That's ridiculous. It's mediocre, and we're 3 episodes in, which isn't even halfway yet. So let's see if it improves. I thought episode 3 was the best so far, which is funny because these people think it was worse than the first 2 because of all these things they don't like, that they imagine are there, at least to some extent incorrectly. But anyway, I just wanted to get this stuff off my chest and call attention to it. I'm going to get out of here for now until I return. May the force be with you.